Hello and welcome here on stage 2, Data Security and Cloud of the Bitkom Privacy Conference 2021. I'm your host, David Schönwert. I'm a policy officer for data economy at Bitkom in Berlin, and I will lead you through our agenda this afternoon. If you want, please also have a look at the program to find out about more of the upcoming slots this afternoon. I'm now glad to kick off this stage with our first talk this afternoon, which is by ShanShan. She is Head of Compliance and Privacy at Alibaba Group for US and EMEA. And the title of her talk will be New Developments in Cloud Technology and Data Security for Practitioners. ShanShan manages global privacy and compliance at Alibaba Cloud and has experience in internal and external compliance and audit functions in finance, technology, and pharmaceuticals. She has also been an active board member and supporter of Cloud Security Alliance, International Association of Privacy Professionals, and the ISACA Association. ShanShan, I give the stage to you. The stage is yours. Welcome at Privacy Conference 2021.
Thank you, David. Can you see the screen? Hi, everyone. Glad to be here again this year. So this year, I'm going to talk about the new developments and have some talk about some trends of this year as compared to last year. Again, this is ShanShan. I'm head of compliance privacy for Alibaba Cloud, the cloud version of the vision of the Alibaba Group. Second. So what are the trends nowadays this year? So we went through last year. Last year we talked about supply chains, awareness trainings, also product designs in time of the crisis. So this year we definitely see a lot of rapid adoption for clouds, and also many new compliance requirements came out. And of course, ever since the SHUM 2 cases, that data transfer is a buzzword, is a hot topic right now, regardless which part of the world that you are in. And then I also want to put on some emphasis on the portability part of it as well. And then last but not the least, since we're talking about the trends development for the practitioner, I also want to share some tools with the privacy or security practitioner for the cloud. That being said, so last year we definitely see a lot of cloud adoption due to pandemic and also with technology as well. But more importantly is we notice that more innovation side development from the cloud versus everyday operations. If last year everybody start to adopt the cloud and then more move towards the cloud business, this year we see a lot of innovation side that utilized cloud tools or a cloud environment to achieve companies' goal. For example, use of high tech, AI, big data, blockchain, and also it was adopted in different industries as well. Autonomous vehicles definitely has a lot of development that utilize edge and cloud computing as well. VR brought in the new future like meeting or virtual experience. Healthcare, of course, regardless, it's always been the area that needs more storage, more processing powers to ensure that the continuous development. Entertainment also is really interesting areas that we do see more traditional entertainment program that moves to streaming and then moves to online. So those are the areas that towards innovation side, of course, daily operations for every organizations that also need to continuous work on their cloud adoptions. Typically, of course, We all compare to, I mean, for the graphic here that I borrowed online, that moving from on-premise to cloud computing, you definitely save a lot of cost. It's more convenient. And the resource on demand, that, you know, for organizations, if I have this special event that I need extra resource, extra processing powers, that's the day I can shift to, versus on the other day when the business quiet or slow season, I don't have to use that much of a resource. Then that's something flexible for company to do as well. And of course, virtual. Everything can be virtual now. Even many of the things that used to be offline, such as going to a park or enjoying a city, traveling, those can all translate to virtual environments nowadays. It's definitely easier, and not even mention the whole year that since last year, all the events I was hosting online that can reach more audience as well. So I do want to point out that, you know, compared to the graphic, that we save a lot of cost or any other matters when moving to the cloud, right? For example, you know, you don't have to care about hardwares, or you don't have to have specific IT personnel or maintenance team to do what you used to do on premise, and also the ongoing costs, you know, the downtime, performance, toning, maintenance, upgrade, which is big, whether that's on hardware, network, or software. However, please still keep in mind that you actually have a different set of skills or personnel or training that needed versus the on-premise one. So while you do have save a lot of ongoing costs for the traditional operation side, you do have subscription fees, and also depends what type of business, what kind of the plan that you have to use with cloud, that might leads you to other type of costs as well. And then in terms of skill set, you know, you do need people to know more about the cloud architect, and you do have to train people about what we mentioned last year, that, you know, the environment, the cloud environment, when everybody sets in the virtual environment, what are the areas that you need to train your employee, whether it's the audience or the practitioner too. So a temporary solution turns into a long-term transformation. That's something we need to consider, and then to work on continuously to make it to a long-term goal. Sorry. So another trend and challenge is definitely for many companies, actually not only the cloud service providers, but also customers or organizations at any sizes, that compliance with multiple requirements nowadays is getting harder and more complex. We just see how many new laws that was in fact this year, and also last year. It's kind of continuous development in different part of the world, especially for global business, that you have to, GDPR is one big challenge, and however, there are many other GDPR similar or alike data protection regulations or other security regulations that came out, and also besides the regulation, industry also develop more best practice guidance or their own framework or practice for business to adhere to. So the responsibility and accountability for compliance actually go both ways. It's not just the CSP has to bear all those compliance obligations. Customers also have their own set of compliance organizations. I want to use this risk graphic to kind of show how it works. So we all know that what is inherent risk versus residual risk. Inherent risk definitely is depends what type of company or what kind of business you are. That's the risk that come with operating this type of a company. And then controls, we all know the internal controls that implement or put in place, trying to address and help to mitigate the inherent risk. However, regardless how much control you have or how well you did, there always going to be a residual risk left. So right now, during this recent years, that we see from the compliance perspective, there are the inherent risks for many companies that just keep growing because, let's say if I'm a retail business, I deal with a lot of personal informations. Then with more data protection law and also higher technology or more innovation method I choose, all those will increase my inherent risk of the business itself. So for risk-based perspective, as many laws, especially GDPR or any other laws and regulations was based on risk-based, that's something that company to revisit as a whole, their risk model, how that will play out. So you inherent risk increase, of course, you will increase more controls, putting more controls. Some might address the technology factors, some might address the new business model, or even different locations or global locations, etc. And then at the end of the day, you cannot totally reduce all the risk. There are still going to be residual risk left that company need to prepare of and need to be aware of. Data transfer. So data transfer, think about this. Some transfers smooth and pretty. Some is okay. Your data transfer look like this, cross-border, different countries. And yeah, some of the data transfer, it just get more complex. So just like I use those flight route for the data transfer, I think this is a really good example and a simple example to kind of explain the situation here. It is complicated. Just like a flight, there are departure, arrival, and also different kind of routes that you choose between point A and point B. Same thing for how your data travels or how you decide for your data transfer as well. Of course, there are customs or passports that we'll see that for whether the country is adequate or whether this country has safety standard in place. Those are all the gatekeeper, the bars for the data transfer. And of course, the layover and ongoing transfer. So sometimes the same data might transfer from one place to the other place and then serve a purpose and then continuously carry on to the other place. So this is kind of a typical thing for the data transfer versus your travel as well. I'm sure for many of us here who have been travels before, definitely know that the trip is not easy and then you definitely need a lot of plan. And of course, security too. You would want to travel in a secure transportation. Same thing as your data, that data you want to transfer in a security stage as well. So how does your data travels? Like the first one or like the last one? It does since for impact sessions that how's the data protection impact assessment was being doing. However, it originally within that there is a transfer section. However, the DPIA kind of just make this more detailed, just focus on how your data transferred and how can you sort it out. Last but not least, portability. So let's go back to cloud. We just talked about the cloud adoption earlier, right? So there are definitely challenges with the cloud. Last year or even the year before, we see a lot of security threat, regardless that's a ransomware or any other service providers or hack or just basic insider threat. Those all the security threat that we're facing every day, whether that's existing in on-premise or we're moving on to the cloud, those never change. You just have a new set of security threat to deal with and different kind of a risk. And of course, regulatory, privacy, data protection, those are all the new requirements that cloud need to face while they are operating virtually everything. And then business continuity is our topic. I also talked about business continuity last year here on this stage, that it is something that we should continue to emphasize on, regardless on-premise or on the virtual in the cloud, because that's something that more company rely on. I was just testing this morning, thinking, what if I don't have an internet? I cannot do this presentation today. So that's how can I ensure the business continuity? So there are risks that involve in everyday operations that we need to consider and need to be planned out for the business continuity. And also, shared responsibility that whether, for privacy perspective, you're a controller or processor, you all have your own share of responsibility, whether under the GDPR or any other regulations. And also, for a security perspective, but customers or cloud service providers, that you all have your own share of responsibility, different layers, different control to implement to take care. So now, with all that said, let's add on portability. And so I do want to spend some time on the portability part, because it can impact all of what I just mentioned. For example, security threats. Now portability and the multi-cloud, we all encourage that. Then you have two types of cloud service providers, or even more, that handles different part of your operations. So let's say just two CSPs, two different vendors, right? And you can have two different kind of security threats. Depends on their own risk, and also depends on the business operation part that they're covering. So of course, if you have 5 different vendors, of course the security threat increases as well. And so from a regulatory perspective, it's interesting that there is something called the concentration the concentration risk. Basically, just say the concentration risk. Basically, just say don't put all your eggs in one basket. So you need to address that concentration risk, especially for some industries. Singapore, for example, they have requirements. The Monetary Authority of Singapore, they have that requirement for financial industries, institutions, saying that they should consider, implement vendor diverse measures, such as, implementing a multi-cloud strategy to mitigate such concentration risk. So that's something particular industry has requirement on top of other generic any other general day-to-day operations. So if you're in specific sectors, that might be something you want to focus on and check out as well. And of course, data protection is more different topics such as data sovereignty, residency requirements, and also to meet the requirement of different part of the world. Whether they're just to simply protect your intellectual property or expanding your privacy legislation obligations, not to mention, different countries, different set of language, different currency when running a global business. So that's a time when you use multiple multi-clouds, something that you're hoping and trying to address. Business continuity, we go back here again. It's not only about disaster recovery per se, but also financial posture of a service provider, and also exit plan for one provider to another. It really depends. This part's tricky. It really depends what kind of provider you're moving from, and what kind of product you're moving to, and also what kind of data, and then also for a cloud perspective, what layer of the cloud that you doing such of the movements. And of course, because there are architect restrictions and also differences as well, which can make portability more complex. So whether that's business to business, B2B, that we call, or business to consumer, B2C, regardless which situation that we have seen and I have heard, also see that portability in the SaaS level for cloud is still very difficult. It's really hard to achieve. Some might not even portable. We did a research paper a few years ago near the GDPR date on the data portability for under GDPR Article 20. It is really hard. The more you're closer to the data, the harder to port. For example, just simply from one application to another, you just simply want to move the data, and then hopefully that still works from the other. The versions, the systems, the format, what's the purpose of the data, they all play a part. And of course, the language that needed for each of the system as well. So that's the challenge that we're still we'll see in the next coming years to hopefully have an industry has a solution for that. And also, you just many different set of knowledge and skills in terms of how system works. So again, it's important for company do have adequate resource that can appropriately manage not only the portability part of the cloud, but also the whole security part of different service provider, different technology, how that will work, how can you ensure the security in those areas as well. Is for all company while we're all doing the portability, it actually create a different kind of a lock-in risk that we might have to consider and then think ahead. Again, it's important to think about temporary solution versus long-term transformation. Technology is there, it's high and low, but what's the best that's suitable to your business, to your business model, that's the best part that you should choose to. And you'll balance between the temporary and long-term business visions and risk associated with each decisions as well. So now I want to kind of use this to transition to some of the tools that I'm going to introduce later. We have been talking about a lot. I want to quote the EU Council see that it's indeed that trust in cloud computing is essential. It's more and more important than before that user trust. Without user trust, technology cannot be able to advance or reach its full potential. At the core of building trust is robust data protection. So tools for data protection are, for example, for the data protection part, that we also participate as a founding member, along with many industry leaders, on the EU Cloud COC, which is recently approved in May by the EDPB and also Belgium DPA. This is a really good set of tools, whether it's for a company to evaluate the GDPR practice of a cloud service provider, but also for any service provider that want to seek or achieve GDPR compliance. That's a tool to go by. Not only we provide detailed description of the GDPR and then translate that to a practitioner level, and also additional tools was provided inside as well to help business different sizes, small, medium, large, to achieve their compliance goal. And also for security, I continuously emphasize and borrow the Lego picture. I think that's the most illustration purpose that, for classification is top priority for we deal with more challenges. Classification of your data, knowing what kind of data that you have by categories. That's kind of the first thing first, because if you don't know what type of data you have, you can categorize them. How can you better protect them? How can you better operate and then working with them? So definitely classification and categorize your data is really important. Even that's a transfer perspective. If you want to transfer, you got to know what kind of data to be transferred as well. And then that being said, once you figured out that, minimization is important as well. We all, from a privacy perspective, collect minimum is necessary, because if you do that, it definitely minimizes the risk of attack surface, misuse, loss and errors, and also that minimize storage powers. If you know how much information, how many data everyone process each day is amazing. So for you, whether that's for energy or environmental perspective, that's something you can see by minimizing data collection only to the necessary. That will help a long run as well. And then protection in layers. As I always want to use this onion as a is an example that the core is the data that you want to protect, and you gotta have many layers, whether that's applications or system or hardware level that you all want to protect the data, and that's the core value of your business. And then last but not least, the tools for partition and transfers. There are different system and platforms that can do ultimately to sort it out for you, but it also depends how big, the scale of your business, how easy to adapt, or using a system and transfer or platform. And also IAPP, they also offer the PIA template. Showing on the graphic here is a little complicated, but it's the graphic, is the route that's to help you to figure it out. And I also see many good sessions this year in the Bitkom privacy conferences that specifically talk about the DPIA. I think that's really great. Hope everyone can take a look and have a valuable experience of that as well. So I'll just say we all been there. We all been through a lot of up and downs, technologies, crisis through last year and this year. Let's embrace change, and then there are many things for us for compliance, security, or data protection practitioner to do. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Thank you.
Wonderful. ShanShan Pa, thank you so much for your insights that you provided. Thank you for your talk. Thank you for being with us at Privacy Conference 2021.